minutes or so that will give you hopefully a good solid overview of Trustwave as a company, who we are, what we've been doing, and then a little bit about why managed security services is a growing field, why it's the area that Trustwave is moving very strongly into, as evidenced by a recent award that we won at the RSA conference here in the U.S. Not designed to push the Trustwave managed security services, just to give you an idea of what we're seeing in the market and what a lot of analysts are talking about, just perhaps as market intelligence that you can use as you're looking at your services going forward. But to get started here, again, just a quick overview of Trustwave, and then we'll talk about managed security. But if you look at Trustwave as a company, we've been around now for over 20 years, 21 years to be a little bit more precise. We got our start within the compliance industry, very early adopters and users of PCI, and built a lot of our early business around the PCI specification. In fact, we helped write the very first one. And so we started in that area and continue to be very well known here in the US and fairly well known in the European market for our PCI services. But a number of years ago, we also started to sell security services as our PCI customers were coming to us asking us for security, recognizing that being compliant did not always mean that they were secure, so they were asking for additional help. And so we've seen that end of the business grow exponentially over the past 9, 10, 11 years, to the point where we actually do far more of our revenue on the security side than compliance. While both businesses are still growing, the security side of our business is the fastest growing, and directionally that's where Trustwave is going as a company. So just a few numbers here to give you a sense on who we are. So we have over 3 million subscribers. When we look at that number in a bit more detail, we have a large number of those are what the PCI world calls the level 4 vendors. These are your small shops that may only have 4, 5, 6 employees. They take credit cards, so they are required to be PCI compliant. And so we sell a lot of those, or manage a lot of those customers through a lot of large banks and ISOs and acquirers. But we do have a large number of security customers and managed security customers. In fact, even compared to some of our largest managed security services providers competitors, we have more around the world than anybody else, and that has been confirmed to us by Gartner at a conference we did with them back in Australia last year. We have over 1,500 employees. In fact, I think the last number I heard, we're closer to 1,600 and growing. We should be close to 1,800 by the end of this year. We are a global company, as you can see. We have customers in 96 countries, and that number is growing as well. And then it's another differentiator, if you will, when you look at Trustwave compared to other competitors, is we have a lot of our own technology. You look at the IBMs, and obviously they have a large technology portfolio, but most of the competitors that we deal with, particularly in the managed security space, they simply resell and do a little bit of management of other solution vendors from the security space. And we can do that as well, but we've actually developed and built and purchased and acquired our own portfolio. So we have this unique capability of being able to mix and match, where we can manage our own, we can sell our own, and we have some very, very strong technologies in that area, but we can also combine that with helping organizations manage and optimize their existing technology solutions. So it just gives us a large amount of flexibility on what we can offer customers today. As far as where we are, as mentioned, we are a global company, and our headquarters are still here in Chicago in the United States. We do have sales offices there in London, also down in South America in Sao Paulo, and then we have one in Sydney. We're growing quite quickly in the Asia Pacific region. It was an area of ours where, to be honest, we hadn't done as well as we probably should have over the past number of years. But in the last couple of years, we've made serious investments there, opened up a number of new locations, are growing out our teams in places like Japan and the Philippines, and also still down in Sydney, so definitely growing areas for us. We do have sales and consulting facilities and people around the world, a lot of very small offices, but they are definitely around the world, as you can see there. A lot of our engineering and security, our innovation centers, they are very global as well. So obviously we have a lot in Chicago, here in the US. Denver is a large area for us. Our largest security innovation center is actually in Israel, where we do a lot of the web security work and our WAF. just our security research is there. We also have an office down in New Zealand where our email security is done. And then we have a lot of our, what we call our Spider Labs team. They're spread around the world as well. So we have some in Warsaw, we have some there in the UK, growing contingent in the Philippines and APAC as well. And the security operations centers, in fact, I believe it's the next slide. Oh, we'll get there in a second, are growing as well. So we'll talk about our Federated ASOC strategy here in just a moment as far as how that helps us maintain our global visibility. As far as what we do, if you look at the mission of Trustwave, we have organized our solutions across the entire portfolio into 3 different areas. We have our threat management services. And threat management services, think of your very traditional gateway services, your edge services, your blocking of known attacks, if you will. Now this has been expanded to include blocking of new attacks, some of the more advanced attacks. But these are your web gateway, your email gateway. Those are your traditional edge gateway type solutions, or even some endpoint stuff that allows us to block known and, again, increasingly some of the unknown and more advanced threats. We have our vulnerability management services, and this is the edge of their part of the portfolio where customers use these technologies to understand what in their environment needs to be protected, and then what is the current risk and vulnerability level of that. So this can be database technology, this can be internal and external vulnerability scanning, but this is, again, designed to give the organizations a view into their environment and what needs to be protected and what is the current risk level of those assets that do need to be protected. And then compliance management, and again, you heard me at the outset talk a little bit about our history there, but even compliance management has expanded well beyond simply PCI. In a number of regions, there are government-mandated regulations. I know you have some new ones there in the EMEA region that have come in recently. There are also internal compliance policy that needs to be addressed. A lot of large organizations have internal security policies, or they have incident response policies. They can do risk assessments. So there's a number of ways even for internal security policies that fall under compliance management that we can help organizations. And then ultimately, for those organizations that are looking for this, we can offer a lot of these solutions as a managed service. We recognize that every organization is in a different place as it relates to potentially going to managed services. So it's not as though we are trying to push anybody in this direction. It simply is where we believe as a market, we have our best opportunity, and so we have a lot of offerings that support the managed security services, but we definitely have plenty of opportunities and options that are not managed, that are drop shipped, that are very strong, and can help organizations get familiar with the Trustwave portfolio, and then as they start to mentally come to terms that managed services may be the right way for them to move forward to help augment and optimize their existing resources, then they can consider Trustwave or any of the other partners that you may have to help down that path and help them get into a better state security-wise. Product-wise, I covered a lot of these, so you can see the number of them are listed here, but you can see threat management is some of your very traditional technologies, your edge gateway technologies, your WAFs, your NACs, your IDFs. Those are very traditional threat management, and we use a lot of that threat intelligence we get from our innovation centers to keep them up to date on some of the latest attacks, and some of these even have a lot of great technologies built in to stop some of the newer unknown attacks, if you will. And again, our vulnerability management, that's just defining assets that need protecting and then understanding what the risk level is and the current vulnerability level is of that. And then our compliance management. Again, it's everything from PCI, other government regulations that are either global or regional, as well as internal compliance management services that we can offer. And then all of this is managed, as you'll see here in a moment, through our Trustkeeper portal, our single portal that allows customers visibility into all of their Trustwave solutions that they purchase from us. There are a number of areas that Trustwave can help with. This is just another way of representing it. Sometimes we find a lot of our customers prefer to see things very visually. So this is just a representation to show that our portfolio of over 40 products does give us a breadth of offerings that is really unmatched in the security space. Even if you look at large vendors, for example, like Symantec, who are going through a little bit of a recasting of themselves again with the Blue Coat acquisition, their portfolio does not quite cover everything that we do as well. So there's just a lot of different places that we can help organizations, both from a pure technology perspective, which would be on the right-hand side of the slide, but more importantly from the left-hand side of the slide, what we're calling business challenges. And we're seeing a lot of success in the past year. We've gotten really strong at this in the past 6 months, if you will. But we're training our sales team to have conversations around business challenges and not so much just technologies. It's very common for an organization to call us up and say, I'd like to purchase your WAF, which is absolutely wonderful. We want to make sure we take advantage of those opportunities every time we get them. But we're working with our sales team is to say, great, Mr. Customer, let's talk about your WAF, but let's really talk about why you need a WAF. That sounds to me like it's an application, a web application security issue. Let's talk more about that. And being able to have that conversation, which again is the left-hand side of this particular slide, allows us to really understand more about why they have web application security concerns, and can we perhaps also talk about application security testing, for example, or web application penetration testing? Are there other things we can add into there, making sure that we close the WAF deal, which is the blue side of the slide, but having that larger business challenge conversation? It really opens up the conversation with the customer. It establishes a much broader relationship, and that really is where we're seeing a lot more success. And again, sometimes this leads to managed security services and sometimes it does not, but it just allows us to have a broader conversation and establish that trusted advisor relationship with the customer. So that's what this slide is trying to represent, is we can help technically with the blue side of the slide, but we can definitely have a larger business challenge conversation with the gray or left side of this particular slide. Another area that Trustwave has been leveraging a lot lately, we've done this for a number of years, but probably more opportunistically, but we are making a more concerted effort, is to leverage enterprise-grade technology and be able to offer these to our customers. And in most cases, these are going to be a managed service, as customers are realizing that the defense in depth strategy still applies, but that continuing to add more and more solutions to their portfolio, while it may make them stronger, is challenging for them to understand and manage and optimize. They may add the newest solution from Carbon Black, for example, and then realize that they don't have anybody that can really optimize it and maximize the effectiveness, pardon me. And so they start looking to outside vendors to help with that. And so we're expanding our list of solutions that we can support in that fashion. So we have our managed endpoint detection response service, which is Carbon Black and Counterattack, and we can manage a number of different network devices. But when we say manage, we can actually go all the way and completely manage it for them and then adjust the security events, for example, and analyze and correlate that for that to give the organizations more visibility. So this is where we're taking the Trustwave portfolio, that 56 patents that we have, which is our own technology. We're augmenting that where customers have already decided they want one of these larger enterprise-grade technologies, and trying to find the right way to mix and match with the customer to define the best way to move their security posture forward. And again, all of this is managed from the cloud. So our Trustwave Trustkeeper portal is our singular portal where customers can log in and see all of their events. And you can see we're talking about total visibility here across most of the solutions they purchase from us. I will say there still are a couple outliers that don't 100% roll into here, but the vast majority of them do. We have applications that have installed at the very top, and I don't mean install, as the new solutions are purchased through Trustwave, the Trustkeeper portal shows them at the very top via an icon. And a lot of these are wizard-based, especially on the compliance side. What I will say is the Trustwave Trustkeeper portal today is very, very good, but we are doing a complete rebuild of it. And that rebuild should start rolling out here probably in the summer, as the last I heard. So what we have today is really good. What we have coming will be totally amazing. And the reason I'm saying it that way is that we're taking a whole new approach with the Trustkeeper portal. Very much the current version we have is application-centric. You can click the icon to see the specific applications. The customer can and see what's happening within that application. With the new version, they'll still have access to all that same information, but we're taking a more holistic view. They can create a dashboard that shows them the security events and the key events, the high priority or critical, across all of their solutions that they have with Trustwave. And again, they can still get to the individual pieces, but the new version will show them that initial dashboard that says across everything you've purchased from Trustwave, across the total visibility that we have into your security infrastructure, these are the events and activities that we think are highest priority that demand your attention right away. So again, very good portal right now, but a little bit long in the tooth, but the new version will be even more amazing and very modern and ready for today's security audience. And we can't really talk about Trustwave if we don't talk about Spider Labs. So when we look at who Trustwave as a company is, Trustwave is the company that makes all of the magic happen, if you will, develops all the products, does all the engineering, the people and process part of the normal cliche that we use here in the security world. But Spider Labs is the intelligence behind it all. And most organizations, most large security organizations have their versions of a security lab, if you will. I came to Trustwave from WebSense, now known as ForcePoint, and worked very, very closely with their security lab there. And so I've gotten a sense on what our competitors doing, having worked from one, looking at others, talking to analysts. And I think when we look at the Spider Lab story, we actually find that it's a very unique organization in what they do. And the reason for that is we actually have 3 different distinct areas that Trustwave Spider Labs develops and applies this threat intelligence and this analysis that they perform. So on the one side, on one piece of this, we collect all the open source information from all the normal sources that anybody can do. So if you look at the X-Force group at IBM, for example, if you look at the counter threat intelligence or unit at SecureWorks, for example, they all do this. That's why it's open source. Everybody collects it. It's a good starting point for any global threat database. And we do that. We share information with Google. We share information with Facebook, for example. So we get a very large amount of information, and through sharing, we actually get even more. But it's open source information, but it comes from all around the world. The second piece of that is the security intelligence that we collect from our own products. So as I mentioned earlier, with a portfolio of over 40 products and then some of the enterprise-grade products that I mentioned a couple slides ago, we can collect the security intelligence from all of these. And because we have the broadest portfolio, specifically in the managed security space, that gives us far more information across a much broader spectrum of product types than anybody else. If you refer back to my WebSense, again now ForcePoint days, they had 3 products, web, email, and DLP. And they collected the threat intelligence from those products, but that was all the visibility they had, so that was all they could get into. So they had the same open source, but their security intelligence from products was limited to 3, where again, Trustwave, we have over 40. So the combined intelligence that we get from all of our products is much broader than anybody else in the industry. And then the final piece that Spider Labs does for us is the forensics investigations. So we do as many incident response and forensics investigations as anybody else in the world, probably more than most, to be honest. We simply don't make as much noise about them as, say, a Mandiant. Mandiant does a lot of this. They make a lot of noise about theirs. They use that as part of marketing. It's just not our culture from our CEO on down. It's just not the way that we do our business. Right or wrong, I'm not saying anything either way, it's just the way we are, but we do more than anybody else. And all of that intelligence that we glean from these investigations rolls back into our global threat database. And then all of this is combined with all the other information to then roll back out to all of our products to make them that much more secure. An example of the type of intelligence that our Spider Labs team who's doing forensics investigations brings back can be found in our Operation Grand Mars report. You can download that from the Trustwave website. We released that about a month ago. It's an amazing report that started with an incident response engagement. We looked into what the customer asked us to do and found what they were asking us to look for, and basically went back to the customer and said, you didn't give us visibility into your entire network, and we believe that there is going to be more stuff out there if we go looking. And the customer said, okay, we believe you, so go looking, and sure enough we did. So very interesting report. I won't give you any more details on that. I strongly urge everybody to go download the Operation Grand Mars report, but the level of detail that you'll see in that and the indicators of response in the last couple of pages that any customer can use to scan their environment today and see if perhaps they are infected with this variant of Carbonac is all the same type of information that goes into our security intelligence that we use for all of our products. So putting all 3 of these together, the open source stuff, the sharing we do with the Googles and Facebooks, the security information we pull from our broad portfolio, and then this forensics investigations data that we bring back from these real world breaches, all of this is the 3 pieces, if you will, of the stool that sits and supports Spider Labs, that supports all of our technologies. Truly very, very unique set of information that, based on my experience, nobody else in the industry has that allows our products to be that much better. Another big initiative for us in the past year has been our Federated Advanced Security Operations Center growth. I've been with Trustwave now for 3 years, and when I first started, we had our 4 data centers. We have 3 here in the United States, and then we had the 1 in Warsaw. Within the last couple of years, 18 months to be precise, we've gone from 4 to 9. And part of that strategy, as you can see here, has been very much in the Asia-Pacific region. But part of that is also partnering with some of the largest telco providers in the world. So actually the very first one we brought on board was Rogers here in Canada, just north of the United States. Rogers is the #2 telco provider in Canada, growing quickly, hoping to be #1 here in the not too distant future. But we have co-located our ASOC in Canada with the Rogers NOC, if you will. And we did the same exact thing in the Asia-Pacific region. So with Optus in Sydney down in Australia, with Singtel in Singapore, and just most recently with Globe in the Philippines. And what this does is it allows us to share security information with them as well. So as they're seeing specific types of security events on their network, we get visibility into that. So not only do we get visibility into what our customers as a managed security services provider is delivering in region, and dramatically increasing the number of customers in these new regions, but we're also getting intelligence and visibility from these telco partners. So it really gives us an unprecedented view around the world of global activity with a regional and local visibility. So we can see things that are happening around the world, something maybe starting in Eastern Europe, for example, and gets picked up first by our Warsaw SOC. And that information can be quickly shifted around the world so that as that threat and that attack vector moves around the world and starts hitting Asia or starts hitting the US or Canada, we're pre-aware of that and are able to drive that intelligence and awareness before it hits the actual regions. In addition, every one of our ASOCs around the world offers the exact same set of services. They offer it regionally for local customers. If you look at countries like Japan, for example, obviously we have some major language barriers there that we had to cross, so we've hired enough staff there to deal with that. But all the support is handled regionally to start with, but if necessary, we can bring in the appropriate resources. If we get into a tier 3 situation where we need a very specific resource to do some reverse engineering and some malware, that resource may exist somewhere else, but we can get them involved globally. We can physically send them if necessary, and then support can be delivered as well throughout. So again, if you use Japan as an example, calls will start there and obviously and most definitely be handled in Japanese, but if we need to bring somebody else in, we will do that and address the language issue as necessary. But we have all the same resources available around the world and again can drive local visibility and support, but pull in various global resources as necessary. So I have received validation from a number of analysts that we are ahead of the game, if you will, on this, that we have as many ASOCs, if not more, than most of our major large competitors, but none of them have them interconnected the way that we do. Even the large AT&Ts, IBMs, and Symantec's don't have them interconnected the way that we do. They'll have regionals, but don't talk to the rest of them. All of our ASOCs as we grow are totally interconnected and will always be so. And we do have plans to build more. I would say we'll probably be over 10 or 11 by the end of the year. South America is a new target for us, Latin or South America, and then another, at least 1 or 2 more will probably pop up in the European region as well. So definitely a very large part of our strategy to increase that global visibility that we have. In the past year, we've also made some pretty amazing additions to our leadership team. If you look at the names where they came from, it's pretty amazing that we're able to bring people in from HP and IBM and F5. And I've talked to all these people and been very honest with them and asked them why they joined Trustwave. And then the answer across all of them, without exception, has been that we believe in the opportunity that Trustwave has, that it really is from a managed security services provider perspective. We have all the right pieces. We simply need to put them together, which we've been doing for the past year or so, and we'll continue to do so. We'll continue to augment, but they all fully believed that our opportunity here was better than the opportunity they had at places like HP or places like IBM. And so this has been a very major change for us as well. It's been a very positive change. It's been a very well-received change. It's driving all of our individual products. So you've got CJ Spalita, who runs our product management team, who came to us from HP. You've got some very major changes and advancements in our managed security services from Chris Schuler, who came to us from IBM. So it really is affecting everything from the individual products, making them that much stronger, all the way through to the managed security services. So it is a little bit of everything, but it's a very strong story. And again, we've received a lot of recognition from analysts for this. They find this a very key part of our story as well. So why Trustwave? At a very high level, there's a lot of security vendors out there. I don't know if any of you were able to attend RSA in San Francisco last week. 43,000 people were at the show. A lot of new vendors, but a lot of the same names that have been around for a number of years. I had a chance to walk around the show floor and notice that the messaging was very, very similar. A lot of the very large players that have been around for a while, their messaging doesn't change much year over year. It's always fun to see the very small vendors. There's a lot around threat detection and response this year. Last year at Black Hat, for example, here in the U.S., it was all about endpoint detection and response. So there's always the new solution that is very, very popular, but the messaging is very, very similar. We can help you with threat detection, we can help you with coverage, and we can help you move on quicker. So why does Trustwave stand out? Why are we getting some of the analyst recognition that we are recently? So very first, we're a security brand that's been around for quite a while. I've mentioned over 20 years. Many of the largest financial institutions around the world, including a large number there in the UK, have been using our solutions both from a PCI to security technology perspective for a number of years. And again, we're getting a lot of recognition from the industry analysts with the strategy we've been executing on over the past couple of years. As mentioned, Spider Labs. You can't talk about Trustwave without talking about Spider Labs and vice versa. They are truly the intelligence behind our people, process, and intelligence that drives everything that we do. And then the Trustkeeper platform. So the Trustkeeper platform is most definitely going to be our Trustkeeper portal. Again, we're going to be updating that, but this is also our Federated ASOC strategy, our many thousands of managed security customers that we have. All of this together becomes the Trustkeeper portal or platform. This whole story, we've been telling this to analysts now very, very strongly for the past couple of years, and you can see that with some of the changes that you've seen in our analyst relations. So IDC released this report earlier in the year, or late last year, pardon me, and showed that from in the U.S. market, from an emerging MSS market perspective, Trustwave is the leader. They really wanted to put us in the global report, but for a variety of reasons, they felt they wanted to wait a year on that. So this is where they put us in this particular report. If you look at Gartner, they have recognized us as the fastest growing MSSP in the global market. Faster than the names you see there, and again, some of the names that I've talked about here. So not only are we expanding our scope, we're expanding our visibility, but we're also the fastest growing as recognized by Gartner. And then most recently, last week at the RSA conference here in San Francisco, we did win the SC Awards Best Managed Security Services Provider Award. And again, as a company, that's directionally where we're going, but it's not at the expense of our individual products. So I just want to make sure it's very clear. We've made that strategic decision that managed security services is where we're going, but we still believe very firmly in the use case for individual technologies, particularly as we're going through partners like E92 and others. So we want you to understand that there's a value to the managed security services market, that there's a value for a number of our solutions that play in that market, but not exclusively and not at the expense of our individual technologies that play very well and might be great entry points for you into a number of customers. And then one final quote from Christina Richmond at IDC. I met with her again this year at RSA. But one of the things that we hear quite consistently from our customers is our ability to customize and create flexible solutions. Not every customer is the same, as you all well know. So our ability to sit down with the customer, have that business challenge, business initiative conversation with them, and understand what they're trying to achieve, and then understand and work together with them to determine what Trustwave can do to help them get there. And again, that may be a dropship product, and that's perfectly fine, and we want to help them as much as possible there. It may be a managed security solution like our managed security testing, which can be scanning all the way through pen testing. Variety of ways we can help an organization, but we have that customized conversation with them, and we have great success with that. And so here's Christina Richmond mentioning that she's talked to some of our customers, and that was one of the major pieces of feedback that she heard. So real briefly, I know we are at the bottom of the hour and heading up towards the top, and so I don't want to spend too much time here without giving everybody a chance to ask questions. I've seen a couple of questions come in, so please, as Daryl mentioned earlier, please make sure you ask questions through the chat window. But what's the value of managed security services? And you may have already seen this. There's a lot of information out there, but I just want to give you a perspective on that. Again, not to sell Trustwave managed security services. That's not the intent here. In fact, I reviewed these slides again, and there's nothing that even talks about our technologies at all. It's just, why are organizations moving to managed security services? Why are analysts talking so much about this, and how can you possibly take advantage of this, whether it's your own solutions or using some of Trustwave to build out your managed security services practice. It's just, why is this where we're going, and why do we believe this is really a good place for a lot of our partners to move? And it starts with, why are the criminals doing what they do? And I don't think it comes as any surprise to anybody on this call that it's all about the money. We've done a lot of research into this. This is coming from our Spider Labs team. This is coming from our 2015 Global Security Report. But the reality is the ability to become a cyber criminal anymore is only limited by your availability of money and access to the right websites. You don't need to be a developer anymore. You don't need to host websites. You don't need to go out and find all these machines with certain exploits and drop malware and create bots out of them. This can all be automated. It can all be purchased. This is a complete criminal underground. Think of Amazon for bad guys, is really the type of environment that we're working with here. So you can go online in the dark web and buy all of these pieces. And so our Spider Labs team did some research on this a couple of years ago and realized that anybody who had access to these sites could spend $6,000, buy all the pieces, not write one line of code, and return on their investment of $84,000 in profit. It's all about the money. Yes, there are definitely cases where it's not, where you get some nation-state attacks. Look at some of the larger media attacks. Look at the Sony breach about a year ago or so ago. There are those as well, but the vast majority of the attacks today are all about the money and ways that they can make more money, and it's completely automated. Criminal underground, you can buy different levels of support for your criminal activities. You can truly buy premium level support just like you would from any vendor. It has become a business. It is cybercrime as a business. And then if you look at what's happened within the technology landscape over the last number of years, there have been some amazing business enablers that have allowed business to do things that they never thought possible. The web, the internet. I remember the very first time many years ago that I saw the NASA website and thought it was the most amazing things. And look at where we are today. We just take it for granted that we always have constant access through mobile and BYOD and the mobile applications. It's just the world we live in today. And then the sheer amount of data that we're collecting, and Google being the king of that and what they do with data, but places like Amazon and many large organizations, what we can do with the data and how we can analyze it. There have been some amazing advances in the past few years, let alone if you go back 15 or so, that has really been able to drive business activity and efficiency and productivity, and obviously revenue as long as with that. But to go along with that, there's been this dramatic increase in risk and complexity. Gone are the days where the cyber criminals were doing things just to be malicious, just to see if they could infect a machine, just to see if they could send a piece of spam to get through. Those days are long gone. It's all business now. It's all about the money. They're trying to breach organizations. Everybody's a target. Government has responded with regulations. It's just a new world that we live in. So as security and IT professionals are being asked to address these enablers and bring them online as quickly as possible, the risk and complexity of supporting them and securing them is increasing at a faster rate, and thus responding with this security gap that needs to be addressed. And that's the gap that we believe, and many analysts believe, that managed security services can help organizations with. Just some numbers. I'm not a big one on selling based on fear, but there is definitely a cost associated with being breached, and it no longer is a case of if, but when. Everybody's going to be breached. Anybody can be a target. You simply have to ask the organization, what is your threshold for how much you're willing to spend if you are breached? The average cost of breach is $4 million US. That may not be for the organization you're talking with, but whatever that cost is, what is that cost that they think they can sustain and pay? How do you keep below that? That's the kind of business challenge conversation you're having. How do you keep your cost of a breach below your threshold? If it's $1 million, if it's 10 million, whatever the number is, how do you do that? That's a business challenge conversation. Every year, Trustwave develops two pretty large reports. We have our Security Pressures Report and our Global Security Report. Both of them are available for download from our website, so I urge you both to take a look at both of them. They present data from the security landscape from two different visions, if you will, different views. The Security Pressures Report is a survey that we do of 1,400 security professionals around the world, asking them what they're feeling and what's happening with them. So it's a security professional view of the landscape. And then the Global Security Report is basically looking at the incident response investigations we did, looking at our global threat database, looking at what we saw across our security technologies So it's our view of the global security landscape from a vulnerability perspective, from a customer perspective as far as what we saw in breaches, who was being targeted, how are they being breached. So it's two different views, and I think they're very complementary. But there's just a couple of quick pieces here of data that can, you can use some of this in your own way just to have that conversation. We're still finding that business enabler conversation is happening. A lot of things are being rolled out new, whether it's shadow IT that organizations don't know about or new SaaS technologies. A lot of organizations have moved to things like Salesforce and a lot of the SaaS base, but security is not always a priority. And so a lot of organizations being asked to roll out new solutions, new technologies, think IoT, without really addressing security beforehand. And doing so is releasing new vulnerabilities into your infrastructure that is going to increase your risk and possibly get you over that risk threshold number. So another, it's a good starting point. Staffing levels, I've been a director of IT in a previous life. The three things we've never had enough time or enough of are people, time, and money, and that doesn't change here. Staffing levels are never high enough. Organizations are always asking for more. This is a great place where managed security can augment. We can help them optimize existing solutions. Again, if they want to bring something new in like counterattack, we can help bring them in and manage it for them so they get maximum effectiveness right away without having to add headcount. A lot of organizations are fine adding OpEx spending in some fashion, not hard headcount and not CapEx. Managed security services are a good way to help with that. This is a very interesting one that really plays into the message that we saw at RSA this last week. A lot of vendors were talking about detection, threat detection, and it is still a very, very major issue. So what we saw between 2014 and 2015, and a very positive movement, by the way, that organizations detecting the breach on their own dramatically increased from 19% to 41%. That's a very, very positive move in the right direction. Still means that 59% of the breaches were not detected by the organization, but it is a step in the right direction. Particularly important there is that when an organization self-detects the breach, it took them 15 days to do that, where if an external organization detected it, it took 168. So basically, if another organization detected that you were breached, the breach lasted at least 5 months longer. These are average numbers here. So at least 5 months longer. So the value of detecting it yourself is in the ability to respond and mitigate that much quicker. So we're seeing some great movement in that. A lot of that can be through better processes, a lot of that can be through better technology, but we truly believe a lot of that is also going to be through better intelligence. A lot of companies have a lot of information. They may be throwing it into a SIEM today. What are they really doing with that? Are they really analyzing, and how are they analyzing it? If you look at the Trustwave Spider Lab story that I talked about and how all that goes into our global threat database and that visibility that we have, that service there, we call it managed threat detection, can be layered on top of either our SIEM for collecting data, or in many cases a lot of the very well-known SIEMs that are out there. We can find ways to use their existing SIEM but do our managed threat detection on top of that. So the ability to add our intelligence to their existing solution to help them get better at detection and containment is a key piece of that, helping them optimize their security resources. And I think this is the last one, but a large percentage of organizations are looking to partner with an MSSP. So you already have 39% which do, and then another 47% which are thinking about it. So 86% of organizations out there today either already are or are thinking about partnering with an MSSP. So again, everybody's at a different place in their journey to being talking to a managed security services provider. But it's just interesting to know that 86% of them are thinking about it and would probably like to at least understand what that might mean for them in possible ways that they can help. So definitely urge you to just have that business level conversation with organizations. Again, use Trustwave where you see fit from a technology perspective. If there are managed opportunities there, we can have that conversation, but this is where the market is going. You're always going to have need for those edge products, those traditional products, even the new products, self-managed by the organization, perfectly acceptable and understandable, but a lot of them are looking for help in other areas as well. So having that business challenge and business initiative conversation is a great way to understand where they're going and what their plans are. So if you look at the overall security pressures, again, I don't think anybody in this call is going to be surprised by this. The threats are just rapidly changing at a level that's just unexpected in most cases, just going crazy as far as the number of threats, the types of changes on a daily basis. We see organizations being attacked by different versions of malware on a daily basis. Even though they may be targeted, the malware writers are changing the malware to look different every single time. So how do they deal with that? New technologies. BYOD was new a few years ago, was all the rage. We've kind of come to terms with it, but there are still elements out there that are security related. IoT is new. Endpoint is making a shift from antivirus to endpoint detection and response. Things are happening, things are changing, new technologies to drive the business. How do we deal with that? And then shortage of expertise. As mentioned, organizations want more headcount. They may not always be able to get it from a budget perspective. If they do have it budgeted, can they even find it? There's a shortage of expertise out there, finding the right people. There's a very competitive market. How do you deal with that? These are all areas that an MSSP can help with. So this is just a kind of a closing slide, if you will, and just the overall value of managed security services. And again, this is not Trustwave specific. This is just our take on why managed security services is where a lot of the security market is heading, why analysts continue to talk about it. But the goal here is to work with an organization to help them have that conversation and help them understand they may have a skill shortage. It may not be that they don't have enough headcount, they may not have the right skills. How can an MSSP help with that? Security budgets, believe it or not, are actually flattening out if you look at a lot of the analyst reports out there, or growing very slowly compared to what it was years ago. So how do we maximize that budget? If I'm not going to get all that I want, which IT and security never have and never will, how do I maximize what I have today? And at the end of the day, how do I improve my security? How do I understand what needs to be protected? And how do I understand my risk level? And how do I understand where to spend my security budget to improve my security? How do I drive 24/7 coverage? These are all areas that any MSSP can help an organization. It's all part of having that business challenge conversation, partnering with the organization, and working with them together. So that's the end of my part of the presentation, and a couple of contact information pieces here. So let me see what we have in question-wise. Fortunately, the question area here is a bit difficult to read. Oh, there we go. I'll do it this way. Okay. So how do you deal with privacy laws? And that's a key area for us. Every product that we have from a managed security perspective has different types of data. We have the security metadata, which we anonymize and strip out customer information as much as possible. In situations where government regulations require us to be local in region with that data, those are the areas that we are looking at putting a new ASOC. So we definitely know that we have to address that in the European market. We know that Germany, for example, is very much on top of that. We know that the UK is as well, and others. So we are looking at that, and that's why I mentioned we will probably have one or two ASOCs in the European market here, hopefully for the end of the year. I know there's serious conversations around that. It's simply a case of business decision on when and where to do that. So it is it's kind of a all over the place answer, and I don't mean to be vague, but it does depend on the solution that they have, but we are looking at that, we are addressing that, and that's another change that our new portal will help with. When we're doing the portal piece of it, there are certain pieces of information that do need to come back to Chicago just to display the portal, and again, we minimize what that is as much as possible. Sometimes to display certain things for the customer to see, it just has to come back to Chicago to go through our current portal. But the new portal will be able to address that, and we'll be able to have regional instances for that. So it really is, I apologize, it's not trying to be vague, but it does partially depend on what they have. But we can definitely have that conversation, and the more intelligence we can get on what customers are asking for from a data sovereignty perspective, the better for us, because that will help us make that business decision on where in the European market we should be putting our new data centers. Second question, in fact the only other question we have right now, is customers who already have their own technology and have trained in-house staff, how can Trustwave Managed Security Services add value? There's a number of ways we can do that. Firewalls and SIM, for example, are two areas we get a lot of requests for. So you saw on that enterprise slide, we can do Cisco today, we can do Fortinet, we can do Palo Alto, Juniper, so we can manage those today. And we've actually had a lot of customers ask us to do that, so that the people who do that today can go and use their talents and time in other places so that they don't have to worry about it, they don't have to manage it. So we can definitely take those over from a management perspective and simply have them send all change requests, for example, through us. Another example of that would be we can ingest their security event information, again, into either their own SIM, or we can run it into our SIM, our cloud-based SIM, or on-premise SIM, and then we can add our managed threat detection service on top of that. So all that intelligence that I described from Spider Labs, we can use all of that to correlate and analyze the events that we get from existing technologies, even again against an existing SIM. Our SIM support is different depending on what that particular SIM is, but we can do all of the major ones today in some fashion or another. So we can do the management of them. We can take over complete control of many of them, but we can also do the managed threat detection, which is all the Spider Labs Global Threat Database information that we have, and let the organization know, based on the events that you're sending us, based on all the IOCs that we have, the indicator of compromise we've collected, based on our threat intelligence, we're seeing that these events are important and you should take a look at them. So that's a pretty key way for us to be able to help with them. And in a lot of cases like that, again, the data stays at rest with them there. And so we're just collecting security meta event. All right, those are the only two questions that I saw come through. So with that, I will pass it back to Daryl. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for that. It was great. I'll contact each of you attendees individually. Thanks for attending. My details are on the screen if you want to contact me with any urgent queries you may have. If not, I'll speak to you in the coming days. Thank you very much.